Mike Owens here, and today I'm joined by big brother Daukaus, Chris Daukaus, who returns to action, UFC
Right.
282, fighting Jairzinho Rozenstruik. Chris, always a pleasure to get yours, or indeed Kyle's time. How are things with you today?
Everything's going good. Everything's going good. The babies are down for a nap, so it's perfect.
100%. How many children have you got? Is it two?
Two. I got a little boy and a little girl. So my son is he's 3, and then my daughter is now she's coming up on 5 months. So it'll be good.
But since we last spoke, you've obviously had the second child, so congratulations.
Yeah. Thank
What
you. Thank you.
what challenges does a second child bring for a fighter's life in terms of training, camp preparation, all of that?
Sleep. Sleep. Yeah, if there's any words of advice for fighters who are thinking of starting a family or having kids, definitely don't plan on any kind of fight camp right after the child is born. Um, within the first 3 months, you just won't be getting any sleep.
Hmm.
You'll be up all times of the night until you get the routine down and all that. So, yeah, don't have kids yet.
I did want to talk about that because obviously we haven't seen you in action since the
Of
Curtis
course.
Blaydes fight. Was that a result of personal circumstance with relation to the baby, or was that were you trying to fight earlier? Kind of walk me through 2022 for you.
It's really just been, I took the two losses, the Curtis Blaydes loss, and the Derek Lewis loss, and I was really just thinking about just letting my body heal. Kind of worked out. When I fought Curtis Blaydes, my leg was a little jacked up, super swollen. Really couldn't walk on it for I want to say it was probably like a week or
Hmm.
two. I was on vacation. I couldn't even like walk on my foot. Um, so let certain body parts heal. Obviously, let my brain heal. My wife was pregnant at the time. Baby was born, and then it was really like I was just saying. I know from personal experience. When my son was first born, before I was signed to the UFC, he was born. Oh, I want to say 2 weeks, 3 weeks before one of my fights,
Hmm.
and for those 3 weeks, it was the worst 3 weeks leading up to the fight. Just because I was up every night at all multiple hours of the night, I didn't feel like, um, that I really got any rest, and I felt like I was awake for 3 weeks. So it was kind of like have the baby, do all the daddy duties that I needed to do, and then when I can get a fight camp and a real good training camp in, do it. And so it just happened to work out. Me and Rozenstruik were supposed to fight October 1st. Things didn't work out then, but we're on a bigger card now, and it seems to be for the better. So I'm happy now.
100%. Let's talk about the Rosenstruck fight now. When I ask you what does Jair Rosenstrike do well, you'll probably say power, given his knockout ability. But if we take that away for just a second, as a opponent, what does Jairzinho Rosenstrike do in terms of a technical aspect? What makes him technically such a good fighter?
I mean, it's his background, his background of being the kickboxer that he is. Um, you know, there's really not a heavyweight, who's as credentialed as him as far as kickboxing anymore.
Mm.
Alistair Overeem obviously was the number one credentialed kickboxer in the heavyweight division. He has since left the UFC. But look what he did to Alistair Overeem in the fifth round of a fight.
Mm.
So he knows how to um, conserve energy. He knows how to attack when he needs to attack. And he's technical and he's extremely well at countering his counter punches. Um, Although he might not move his head a lot, he might not do certain things. When he lands, he lands.
Mm.
So that'll be certainly a big thing to look out for.
He had this surge when he joined the UFC with I think he was undefeated prior to the Ngannou fight. I think he's lost four of his last five or four of his last six. So there's quite a lot of evidence and quite a lot of tape that I imagine you and your team can work from in terms of holes to potentially look at. Of his losses in the UFC, which of those can you feel you can take the most from and apply with your skill set in your game?
Oh man, I mean, obviously not the Francis because I don't have that super one punch knockout that Francis does, but just it's really just a combination of things. Generally looking at an opponent, I just tend to look at their most recent fights. Um, I want to look at a guy who his most recent fights is could be within the past couple months. to as far out as maybe like 8 months, depending on how frequently the opponent's fighting. There's really no reason, in my opinion, to go back any further than that. Just because us as mixed martial artists, we're always evolving, and it's our skill sets are always changing, especially nowadays and quickly. That the guy that I was, when I was first signed in 2020, I'm not the same guy.
Mm.
Just skill set wise, and you can go and say that's pretty much for anyone across the board in the UFC. So, I mean, you really just have to look at the most recent fights and just pick apart those ones as best as you can.
100%. Who you mentioned there, the fight was originally booked for, I think, the first week of October. Obviously,
Yeah,
pushed back now to 12th of December. Who do you
yeah.
think the pushback favors more?
Definitely me. I think if history serves itself, same thing happened with Shamil, right? I
Mm.
think that fight was pushed back a total of 3 times, and every time I was super upset about it. But look what I did with Shamil. So, um, if you're going to fight me, it's probably not best for you to be pushing the date back. Just giving me more time to game plan and more time to work where I'm going to be working.
100%. And obviously, we've got Kyle in action the week prior. I don't even want to
Yes.
think about what you two are doing to each other in the training room, both preparing for a fight. What is the
Yeah.
intensity like with two brothers preparing for a fight a week apart?
It's not it's good and it's bad because there's certain days when he's getting on my nerves or I can tell when I'm getting on his nerves. And if one of us says something or one of us does something, it's going to be, uh, UFC 282 all over, UFC Orlando right then and there. It's because we're both, we're super competitive. We're training for the fight. We know what each of these fights mean for his career and my career, and we're not backing down an inch on anyone in the gym, and especially each other. I mean, obviously we're not reckless, we're not careless in the way that we're training, but I'm trying to win every round, and he's trying to win every round in every position that we get into, or whether it's striking, wrestling, wall work, whatever it is. But yeah, it's certainly intense on some days.
Yeah, that's a very intense schedule when you think about it. Flying to Orlando, spending the week with, in your case, your younger brother's fight camp, having the emotion of watching him get in the cage,
Yeah,
knowing that in a day or two you're flying all the way to Las Vegas to prepare for your
yeah.
own fight. What is that like for you? Because I would imagine in some ways it's a more stressful scenario, having to prepare little bro, but knowing in the back of your mind your fight's
Yeah.
coming up too.
Yeah. It's super. It's stressful in the fact that when he fights, I feel like I have no control because obviously I have no control. So I think that's why it's super stressful for me when he's fighting. Um, but the timeline works for me. The timeline works. At that point, there's really just you're fine tuning some things, and the people he's going to have in his corner um, are the people that I would have in my corner, and the specific people that I would be working during that last week. I mean, to be honest with you, I really stopped sparring 2 weeks out just to save the body.
Mm.
There's really no reason to be doing any kind of hard sparring that close to fight time. The risk reward ratio is just it's too great. But I'm ready to go, and once we get through his fight, my nerves will be fine because I have little to zero nerves when I fight. It's just another day in the office. It's what I like to do, and I'm going to be performing in front of the world. So what more could I ask for?
100%. Obviously, I want to talk a little bit about the last 12 months because obviously you're coming off a couple of setbacks in your last couple of fights.
Yeah,
And at this age where you are now, 33 years of age in your career,
yeah,
a lot of people would assume that your skill set is kind of complete. You kind of have what you have at this stage of your career.
yeah.
So, with that being said, with where you're at in your career, has this camp been focused upon building new weapons and building new skill sets, or refining what you already have as your base?
I honestly think it's a little bit of both. I mean, no one's really seen my wrestling, no one's seen my jiu-jitsu work, but everyone's seen my stand-up, and obviously he's a kickboxer,
Mm.
so I know how to strike. But it's about refining those skills. It's about refining the techniques and what I'm seeing specifically from his kickboxing background, the types of things that he does. But as far as myself, I mean, you're always trying to build, you're always trying to learn, you're always trying to do new techniques. And yeah, at this point, I mean, if you're really not learning and you're really not trying to, you know, improve your skill set, I think you're going to be out of the UFC, and you're going to be out of a job really quick.
100%. One thing that's also very interesting, and I don't mean to rub it in, but yours and Kyle's are the first two UFC events post Thanksgiving. So obviously, Thanksgiving is coming up next week, and then you guys are obviously in
Yep.
weight cut preparation. Specifically, Kyle, who's got that extra little bit of a week.
Specifically Kyle, yeah.
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 Can I ask,
Yeah.
what is your more favorite public holiday, Thanksgiving or Christmas? Which one means more to you?
Definitely Christmas. I love Christmas, especially since having kids and all that. Definitely Christmas. I just think it's a great time of year. Now, don't get me wrong. I love cooking. I doing a turkey on the grill, smoking a turkey and all that. I think it's phenomenal. I think it's great. But I feel that the whole atmosphere in itself in Christmas, you're obviously you're getting together with family for Thanksgiving as well. But there's just something more about Christmas for me than Thanksgiving. So,
I agree. I want to talk very quickly
yeah.
about someone else on the card, the ever
Yeah.
synonymous, the form other Scouser on the card, which is where I'm from in Liverpool in England, Paddy Pimblett.
Okay.
He's come on and let's be honest,
Okay.
he's made a splash in the UFC. But he's quite a polarizing figure. So what are your thoughts
Absolutely.
on Paddy? And do you think he beats Jared Splash
Absolutely.
Gordon?
I don't mind Paddy. I think Paddy's fine. I think he's a character. I think he's great. Everything he does with mental health and all that, I think he's phenomenal. Um, does he get past Jared Gordon? I think if he has the right type of game plan against Jared, if he doesn't start getting crazy and start swinging and wild, I think he could pick Jared apart. And I think he might have the better ground game than Jared. I don't want to say for sure, but you know, Patty's a little wild man. He'll throw that to the wolves and just start throwing down. So it'll be a good fight for however long it lasts.
How far do you think he goes? Do you think he's championship material? Do you think he's top 5 or top 10 material? Or do you think he's just going to be a star for as long as it lasts?
He'll definitely be a star for as long as he lasts. He'll definitely break the top 10. I'll say top 5. Um, he may challenge for the belt. It depends on how things play out. If he keeps himself skinny, if he doesn't jump up to 200 pounds, 205. But yeah, I think he'll be able to challenge for the belt at least one day. Whether he gets it, that's on him. But
Mm.
I definitely think he has the ability and the projections and the reach to definitely do that.
Talking about the belt, let's talk about the heavyweight division. Are you surprised that we haven't seen the champ, Francis Ngannou, back since not only his own fight in January, but since we last spoke in February? Are you surprised the belt hasn't been defended?
No, because I knew that he came out and said after that fight that he needed knee surgery. He said he blew his knee completely out. So I would expect him to take as much time as he possibly could for a good, proper surgery, good, proper rehab, um, getting back into training. And then the thing that no one really wants to talk about it was that he was in still contract negotiations with the UFC.
Yeah.
So that could be another thing. He could be physically ready to go and mentally ready to go, but if things aren't making sense to him, fiscally, like monetarily, he's not gonna do it. I think Francis is extremely smart with his money. He knows the type of star power that he has. He knows the type of draw that he is, and he's not taking anything less than what he feels like he deserves. And he's rightfully to be able to do that. Um, was I expecting a Jon Jones announcement with him? Maybe, maybe. Um, but I think that the UFC will sit down with him. I finally think that they'll get it done. I think he'll probably fight early next year. I don't want to say too early. Maybe we say the first quarter of next year. Maybe April, March, April.
Mm.
And then against who? I don't know. Maybe John. I've said this in other interviews and things like that. I don't believe that Stipe and I don't believe that Francis need a Jon Jones fight. I think Jon Jones needs a Stipe fight, and I think that Jon Jones needs a Francis fight for their legacies. I think that both of those guys could tell Jon Jones to go kick rocks, and their legacies would be complete, and they can just continue to do what they're doing. So it'll be interesting to see what's next in the heavyweight landscape. So we'll see.
Give it to me right now, Chris. Give it to me. Give me the juicy prediction. If you wake up tomorrow and Francis Ngannou versus Jon Jones is announced, who's your money on?
Oh, Francis. I think Francis. I think that Francis will be able to walk John down, to walk John down. Even though how crazy that sounds to say, I think that Francis is so big, and John's a big guy. Don't get me wrong. John's a big guy, his reach, but I think Francis would have the bigger reach because I think Francis's reach is, I want to say 84 inches, and John's, I want to say, is 81 inches. And John he's never been hit by a heavyweight as big as Francis. He's never been hit by a heavyweight, let alone a heavyweight as big as Francis, as big as the guy who literally flatlines everyone. Anyone in the world that Francis decides to punch in the face, they're going unconscious. And I don't think Jon Jones is any different than any other human being on this world. So if I would make a prediction, I would say Francis would knock out Jon Jones. Whether that was strictly stand up or if John decided to wrestle, Francis does what he did to Kane and sprawls a little bit, hits him like an uppercut, puts him to sleep. I just think Francis is better.
Yeah, no, it's a very, very real possibility. I think people are
absolutely
presuming a little bit too much when it comes to Jones's move to heavyweight.
Yeah. I mean, don't listen. John will try and stay to the outside as best as he can, but there will be a point in time when Francis decides, okay, he throws another kick. I'm going to take another little 3 to 4 steps in, and I'm going to let my hands go, and we're going to see if Jon Jones is a heavyweight, and we're going to see if all the talk is real and this whole hype has been worth it. We'll see if he can keep up, and I don't think anyone is going to be able to stand up to that. I think Francis is just going to run right through John.
Talking about heavyweight champions, I want to transition to a heavyweight champion from your neck of the woods, from your area in Philly, because Philadelphia is synonymous with one of the most famous characters in movie history, in Rocky Balboa. Okay. Chris, give me your pick for your favorite Rocky movie and give me a reason why it's your favorite.
Favorite Rocky movie is probably just Rocky 1. It's the first one. It's the one that started everything. Really, why it's my favorite one is because like where he grew, where like the story takes place in Philadelphia. Like my parents grew up there. Like when I became an adult and I started working as a police officer, I would drive past Rocky's house. I could take you to Rocky's house right now. His quote unquote his house right now. Like it's down, it's underneath the L. It's a bad neighborhood still. But my parents were from there. They knew all the area, so that like has like roots, I guess you could say, with me, like a lasting impression. So Rocky 1 for me, definitely.
100%. If we turn the conversation back to yourself, obviously the fight in December against Rozenstruik is of prime importance. I won't bore you with a prediction because we all know what you're going to say. It's the W at all costs. But we're at the end of November 2022 now. What would you like to have accomplished in the next 12-month period? Where would you like to be come the end of November 2023 in your career?
Really just sustaining myself and sustaining my spot in the UFC heavyweight ranking. Obviously get a win. Probably try and fight, if we're looking strictly for this time period next year, maybe another 2 to 3 times this year. I want to stay active. And it all depends on the landscape and who's available, you know, what fights make sense. If I could fight now, get the win, and then if the UFC decides to have a, you know, whatever they decide that they want me to do, if they want me to decide to fight in May, I'll fight in May, and then maybe same time, you know, September, October of next year, I would totally be fine with that. I'm the type of person who really likes to stay active. If I could fight, you know, every 4 months, barring any kind of injuries or anything like that, I would absolutely do that. But this time next year, be right back to where I was. You know, I think I'm ranked 11 now. I, you know, obviously get closer to that top five spot. And just be right there. I'm, you know, always willing to throw down with anyone and throw down with people who've beat me before. So if the UFC deems fit that I fight Curtis Blaydes again for whatever reason, or if I fight Derek Lewis again for whatever reason, I'll gladly do that. And if they decide that they want to put me in another direction as far as fighting other guys in the division, I'm fine with that. whatever the UFC wants to do, I'm one not to turn a fight down. So.
Of course, well, it all starts up again next month with not only Kyle's fight before yours at UFC 282. So, Chris,
Yeah.
I wish you the best of luck and thank you so much for your time. And it was great to catch up.
Of course. Same here, brother. Thank you for having me.
Before we finish, Chris, how can people find you on social media and any sponsors you'd like to plug? The floor is yours to sign off with.
Appreciate that. So yeah, just Chris Daukaus MMA. It's on Instagram and Twitter. That's pretty much all I use nowadays. I'll get into Twitter arguments, so if people want to argue with me about anything, by all means, go over there.
Including favorite Rockies.
Including the favorite Rockies and which Rockies suck and all that. Yeah. So whatever you guys want to argue about, I'm fine with it. So whatever. About which team's better, in the Premier League, I'm fine to argue with them too. But yeah, the Fuel Hunt guys, Performance Meal Prep, everyone at the gym, Martinez BJJ, thank you for everything. I really appreciate it. And you, thank you for having me, and thank you for getting my voice out there. Thanks, man.
Make sure to subscribe to the LowKickMMA YouTube channel for all the latest news, event previews, and interviews with some of the biggest stars in MMA.